The Valorian diplomatic station orbited the gas giant Nephros 7, a gleaming monument to interspecies cooperation. Representatives from 43 different civilizations worked within its crystalline halls, negotiating trade agreements, settling disputes, and maintaining the fragile peace that held the galactic community together. Commander Jakar, a 7-foot-tall Valorian with iridescent scales and 4 arms, stood in the observation deck, all 4 of his hands clenched in frustration. Behind him, the emergency containment field hummed, barely holding back 3 small creatures that were systematically destroying everything in their path. "This is unprecedented," Jakar hissed to his second-in-command, a methane-breathing Korlaxian named Velp. "Wild draconids this far from their homeworld? And hatchlings at that?" The creatures in question were no larger than Earth house cats, covered in emerald and sapphire scales that shimmered under the station's artificial lighting. But their size was deceiving. In the 30 minutes since they'd somehow infiltrated the station, they had injured 12 personnel, caused 3 hull breaches, and melted through 2 reinforced security doors with their acidic breath. "Security protocols are ineffective." "Commander," Velp gurgled through his translation device, "stun weapons only enrage them. Physical barriers delay them by minutes, and they're growing more aggressive with each passing moment." Jakar watched as one of the hatchlings released a stream of corrosive vapor that ate through a support beam. Draconids are apex predators from birth, highly territorial, notoriously unbondable. The Galactic Council classified them as a level 9 threat decades ago. He turned to Velp, his mandibles clicking with worry. "If we can't contain them before they reach the reactor core..." "Commander," a voice crackled over the comm, "the human has entered the containment zone." "What human?" Jakar demanded, his scales flushing with alarm. "Get them out immediately." "He refuses to leave, sir. Says he can help." Jakar's 4 arms gestured wildly in exasperation. "Humans," he muttered. The newest species to join the galactic community, barely 2 decades into their integration, and they already had a reputation for being impossibly stubborn and dangerously creative. "Pull up the visual feed." The holographic display flickered to life, showing a human male in a maintenance uniform casually walking toward the 3 hatchlings. He carried what appeared to be a container of food in one hand. James Chen, according to his file, mechanical engineer. 32 Earth years old. Unremarkable in every measurable way. Is he insane? Velp burbled. "Those creatures will tear him apart." But something strange was happening. The hatchlings, which had been in a frenzy of destruction moments before, had stopped moving. Their reptilian heads swiveled toward the human, nostrils flaring. James sat down cross-legged on the floor about 10 meters from the nearest hatchling. He opened his container and pulled out what the database identified as a sandwich, a common human food item consisting of various ingredients pressed between bread. "What is he doing?" Jakar whispered. James took a bite of his sandwich, chewing slowly. Then deliberately he tore off a piece and tossed it gently toward the closest hatchling. The creature's head snapped toward the flying food. Its jaws opened, catching the morsel mid-air. There was a moment of absolute silence throughout the command center as everyone watched the hatchling chew. Then it chirped. A high-pitched, almost musical sound. "By the 7 suns," Velp breathed. "It's..." "Satisfied?" James tore off another piece and tossed it to the second hatchling. Then the third. Each one caught their portion with increasing eagerness, their earlier aggression melting away like ice in a supernova. "Get me a xenobiologist," Jakar ordered. "Now." Dr. Seraph, a xylothan with a crystalline body structure, appeared beside the commander within minutes. Her facets reflected the scene before them. James Chen, now surrounded by 3 draconid hatchlings, hand-feeding them pieces of his lunch while they made contented purring sounds. "Fascinating," Dr. Seraph chimed, her voice like wind through glass tubes. "Commander, what exactly is in that human food?" Jakar pulled up the nutritional analysis. Protein from an earth creature called turkey. Vegetable matter. Cheese, a processed dairy product. Some kind of fermented vegetable spread the humans call pickles. And... Commander Jakar squinted at the data.
"Multiple chemical compounds labeled as spices." "There," Dr. Seraph said, pointing with a crystalline appendage.
"That spice mixture. Analyze the component labeled capsicum." The computer obliged. Jakar's scales rippled with surprise. "It's a chemical defense mechanism? Designed to cause pain in most mammals?" But not in reptilian species, Dr. Seraph explained. In fact, for creatures like draconids, capsaicin triggers their pleasure receptors. It's identical to a pheromone compound their parents use to bond with hatchlings during feeding. These babies aren't attacking because they're aggressive, they're attacking because they're starving and stressed. On the screen, James had managed to coax all 3 hatchlings into his lap. They were competing for his attention, rubbing their scaled heads against his arms while he continued to feed them. But how did he know? Velp asked. Draconid biology isn't in the human educational databases. It's classified information. Shakar pulled up James Chen's personal file, digging deeper. His planet of origin: Earth, continent Asia, region Sichuan. The commander's eyes widened. Computer analyzed the culinary traditions of this region. Data flooded the screen. Dishes with names like mapo tofu, kung pao chicken, hot pot. Every single one loaded with the capsaicin compound. He's from a culture that deliberately breeds plants to produce this chemical, Shakar said slowly, then adds it to their food for enjoyment. They've built an entire cuisine around a substance that causes pain to most other species. Humans, Dr. Seraph chimed with what might have been amusement. They'll eat anything. A month later, the Valorian diplomatic station had been permanently altered. The 3 draconid hatchlings, now the size of large earth dogs, had imprinted on James Chen. The draconid matriarchy, initially furious about the kidnapping of their young, had been mollified when they learned the hatchlings were healthy, happy, and bonded. The Galactic Council was still processing the implications. Draconids, the most dangerous and unbondable species in known space, had been pacified by a human's lunch. The event had sparked a revolution in xenobiological research and interspecies relations. Commander Shakar watched from his office as James walked through the station corridors, the 3 dragons following him like loyal pets. Personnel from dozens of species stopped to stare, to take images, to marvel at the impossible sight. Note to self, Shakar muttered, updating his personal log. Never underestimate humans, especially not their food. One of the hatchlings, the one James had named Pepper, released a small burst of flame perfectly controlled to help James heat his coffee. The human thanked the creature, scratching behind its auditory ridge exactly how it liked. Jakar's mandibles clicked in what might have been a smile. Humanity, fuck yeah, he said, testing out the strange human phrase he'd heard in the station's recreational areas. On the screen, James shared another spicy sandwich with his unlikely companions, and the dragons purred loud enough to be heard 3 decks away. Indeed, Shakar thought, fuck yeah, and